We now come to the third essential requisite for a contract, which is cost or consideration. Article 1350 provides that in onerous contracts, the cost is understood to be for its contracting party, the prestation or promise of a thing or service by the other. In remuneratory ones, the service or benefit which is remunerated, and in contracts of pure beneficence, the mere liberality of the benefactor. Cause is essential or more proximate purpose or reason which the contracting parties have in view at the time of entering. It is the why of the contract, the essential reason which moves the contracting parties to enter into a contract. In onerous contract, it pertains to the reciprocal obligations with each other. So for example, of an onerous contract, it is a contract of sale. So there in a contract of sale, there is a delivery and transfer of ownership by one party to another in exchange for a price or consideration. And so the consideration with respect to the seller would be the payment of the price certain in money or its equivalent. With respect to the buyer, the consideration or the cost for the contract would be the transfer, delivery and transfer of ownership or the acquisition of ownership. So that is an example of an onerous contract or a contract with onerous consideration. For remuneratory, the cost is the service or benefit which is to be remunerated. For example, a person had undertaken an accounting service, or he had undertaken, he made a representation in behalf of another, a lawyer made a representation in behalf of another person in a case. So that service would be the cost or consideration for another, and the purpose of the contract is to reward the service that has been previously rendered. It's equivalent to compensation for the rendition of service. For gratuitous, it is by mere liberality. Ibig sabihin, it is by mere kindness of the giver. For example, in a donation, the cost would just be the donor would just want to give for free out of the generosity of her heart. And that is the consideration for the contract of donation or the deed of donation. Likewise, for comodatum, it requires the delivery of a specific thing to another for the enjoyment of the other party with the intention of returning the same. Ito yung pahiram lang. Halimbawa, pahiram ng bisikleta, isasauli din yung bisikleta. At yung pagpapahiram ng bisikleta, without consideration, it's by mere liberality, usually without price, without price that has been paid, but by mere liberality of the one who lent the bicycle for the enjoyment of another. The difference between cause and motive would be cause is the immediate or direct reason, while motive is the remote or indirect reason. For example, in our contract of sale, in a contract of sale, as we have said, the cost, as far as the seller is concerned, in a contract of sale would be the price that he will be receiving from the buyer. But the motive could be that he is selling, for example, his bicycle because uh, he is in need of money for the hospitalization of a family member, for example, or he is selling his cell phone in order to raise cash to buy groceries, for example. So that is the motive for entering into a contract. It is an indirect reason. No. As far as the buyer is concerned, the cause would be the acquisition of ownership or the transfer of ownership in a contract of sale. And it could be that the motive would be, for example, it's a contract of sale of bicycle. Is the motive for buying a bicycle would be para magamit siya na merong pang transportation papunta sa office because of walang public transport, or the motive for buying a cell phone would be para meron siyang magamit sa online learning. Okay, so that is the difference between cause or motive. Cause is always known to the contracting party, while motive may be unknown, because we know that, for example, in a contract of sale, it is always that when one enters into a contract of sale with respect to the seller, for example, the cost is always with respect to the payment of a sum of money in exchange for the goods or items to be delivered or to be transferred in ownership, no? And with respect to the buyer, the cost is always the acquisition of ownership of a thing that has been purchased or bought, notwithstanding whatever their motives for entering into a contract of sale. Cost is, of course, an essential requisite of a contract, while motive is not. No, and the illegality of cost affects the validity of the contract, because if the cost is illegal, then the contract would be void, while the illegality of one's motive, no, it will not render the contract void. So for example, the motive is kaya siya bibili ng bisikleta because gagamitin niya ito para pang hold up, no? That motive is illegal. Kaya lang, motive is not an essential requisite of contract, and so it will not invalidate a contract. The following are the requisites of cause. First, it must exist at the time the contract is entered into. Because if it does not exist at the time that the contract is entered into, then the contract would lack one essential requisite, which is cost or consideration. You have to remember that the three essential requisites for contracts, they must concord. No, ibig sabihin, they must be present together at the perfection of the contract. Absent of one, then we do not have a perfected contract. We do not have any contract to speak of. Second, it must be lawful. And third, it must be true or real. No? The absence of one, the absence or want of cause means that there is lack of any valid consideration. And so if there is no consideration, there is no contract, valid or perfected contract to speak of. Article 1352, it provides that contracts without cause or with unlawful cause produce no effect whatsoever. No, cause is unlawful. It is again just like objects. No, they are contrary to law, morals, good customs, public order, or public policy. So objects and cause, they must always be in accordance with law, morals, good customs, public order, or public policy. They must not be legally and physically impossible. Article 1353, the statement of a false cause in contracts shall render them void. No? Ibig sabihin, the intention of the party is really, for example, a contract of sale, but what they entered into is a contract of mortgage for the purpose of prejudicing, for example, yung creditors, no? Then you have a false consideration in a contract, which would render that contract void. And Article 1354 provides for a presumption, no, that in case a cause is not stated in the contract, it is presumed that there exists a lawful cause unless the debtor proves the contrary. Article 1470, this is with respect to a contract of sale, no, that in case there is gross inadequacy of price, does not affect the contract of sale, except it may indicate a defect in the consent, no, or the parties intended a different contract, like donation or some other contracts. For example, in a contract of sale, the market price of a vehicle, for example, is 300,000. Kaya lang ibinenta lang ito ng 20,000. No, yun yung nilagay as consideration. Then we have gross inadequacy of price. The presumption is gross inadequacy of price does not affect a sale, except that it may indicate that there is a vitiation in consent. Halimbawa, it was shown that the consent of the seller was obtained through fraud or by mistake or by intimidation or any other vice that would vitiate consent. Or the gross inadequacy of price could be, it could be the real purpose is a donation. No? If the price is simulated, the sale is void, but the act may be shown to have been in reality a donation. If price is simulated, it means that there is a declared price in the contract, but however, no consideration was actually given. And so the consideration, as if there is no consideration at all, because the price is simulated, it is fake, it is false. No, it was just it was intended to mislead, but the real purpose of the parties is the contract has no consideration at all, but the price is indicated for purposes only of indicating a price, but not the real intention of the parties. And so if the price is simulated as if there is no consideration in a contract of sale, and so the sale would be void. And again, not unless in reality it is a donation or some other kind of contract. A contract for the delivery at a certain price of an article, which the vendor in the ordinary course of business manufactures or procures for the general market, whether the same is on hand at the time or not, is a contract of sale. However, if it is especially manufactured for the customer, then it is a contract for a piece of work. And also, if the consideration is partly in money and partly of another thing, it could either be a contract of sale or a contract of barter. If the value of the thing given as part of the consideration exceeds the cash or the amount of money or its equivalent, then it is a barter. Otherwise, kung mas mataas yung pera na binigay kaysa yung value of the thing that is given in consideration, then it is a contract of sale. In Article 1482, this is in relation to contract of sale. Whenever earnest money, we would learn more about this, about option money, earnest money, down payment, when you have your subject in regulatory framework and other legal issues in business. Article 1482 provides whenever earnest money is given in a contract of sale, it shall be considered as part of a price and proof of perfection of the contract. So that would be all for the discussion on cost or consideration.